Okay, well, I finished watching the web series Jubilee on Amazon Prime Video just a few weeks ago, hot off the press, and it left me dazzled, intrigued, and incredibly satiated. And so the first person I reached out to as soon as I finished watching it was none other than the man behind the brilliance himself, Mr. Vikramaditya Motwane. Vikram, thank you so much for making the time to do this. And I genuinely cannot tell you how excited I am to unpack Jubilee and a lot else about your journey. But first of all, tell me, how are you and what have the last few weeks been like? And has there been a moment to breathe, really?
No, I'm well, thank you, Saba. I'm well, and the last I mean, it's been fun. It's been incredible. It's I think a lot of people have been moved by Jubilee, and I think from the kind of response that one has been getting from friends and from family and from strangers and it's the qualitative love that's been coming has been quite something. It's been very overwhelming, and I think I'm so glad that people have loved it, and I'm so glad it worked. It's a true labor of love in the most non-cliched way, and it's for the whole team. And I think we're all just feeling very, very happy that it's out there.
Yeah, Vikram, I love the fact that you said qualitative because as someone in academia, I feel like that's a word that people don't fully understand the power of, and that really resonates. So I completely get it. Let me sort of start with Jubilee then, Vikram, beyond what the last few weeks have been like. And I know somewhere you said that Jubilee has been a love story in the making for me ever since I was an assistant director, enamored with the world of the movies, even when there wasn't a story to tell. Now, as a viewer, as an audience, I found that it's something that ties the personal with the political without kind of becoming preachy, without becoming didactic, but there are obviously big themes here. You're talking about partition, you're talking about the entertainment industry. And I found there were moments that were seared and charged, and yet there were moments that were quite tender. So I suppose I want to begin there, that as a storyteller, talk to us a little bit about the architecture of a series like Jubilee. I mean, what does it take to visit a bygone era, visit themes that, have been done to death in the past? But as I said in a video that I made about Jubilee, this is a breath of fresh air, not least of all because it's not cookie cutter like. It's not clunky. I mean, so I suppose my question is, what does it take to preserve the complexity, the layers, the nuances when dealing with issues that are so large? Because you've done it in a mesmerizing way.
Well, thank you for that. I think that the main thing, and this is something that me and Atul, when we were writing the scripts, and was the fact that so both of us are huge fans of, not only we're both students of film. I mean, we both became assistant directors around the same time. We started our careers in the same place. Him with Ramagopal, me with Bansali. So it's a certain love for the medium of filmmaking and love for what happens behind the scenes. But I think both of us also have a huge love for just the movies in general. And so going back to the 40s and 50s and the 60s and whether it's Indian filmmakers or whether it's that combined love. He loves John Ford is his favorite filmmaker. Kurosawa is my favorite filmmaker, but there's a love also in between for Hitchcock, and so you almost it's almost like a second nature of being able to talk about movies in a certain sort of way. But we were very, very certain when we were doing this is that it's the characters that end up taking prime, the most important place in Jubilee's narrative is of the characters. It's of the people that inhabit the place. It's not the place. It's not the milieu. It's not all that stuff is all background to the actual drama of the story that's being told at the foreground itself. And we knew that the moment we took that approach and said that it's all about the drama, that drama could be placed very easily in 2010 and it could be placed in 1947 and it still works. It's just that, and then your milieu works in the background. It works in the background for it. So we were very kind of focused on that, and that was my entire focus with the team as well. It's always that the drama takes center stage and everything is working behind that, whether it's music, whether it's the world, whether it's the production design, the art design, the operatic nature of it. And I think that was kind of like the tenet that we sort of like took across the board. But what also definitely helps is the faith that a studio has in you to be able to tell a story that's not cookie cutter, that's not going to be the standard thing. And I mean, hats off to Amazon and to Aparna Purohit for the fact that they've gone on their support and said, we love the story, we want you to tell the story, and we want you to tell it in your way without having to compromise in making it something that it's not, and trying to simplify it, or do you simplify it, or do you make it palatable to a broader audience? And they didn't go for any of that. They're like, no, we want the vision to be what it is, and we want the vision to be. I think that was very comforting to have a studio, have your back on those things.
Sure.
And I think, yeah, I mean, it's great, but also like I'm saying, Atul and me, because we love the movie, we're also kind of responsible filmmakers. We come from a place where we love the commercial story. So it wasn't an artistic approach to it. It was a very straightforward storytelling, character-driven, high drama-driven. It's very operatic in places. It's almost, like there is a certain... And that was a pretty conscious kind of like call. I think it all came together quite well. I think it's one of those things where it happens rarely, where your cast and your music and your scripts and everything just comes together in this really interesting package in a moment in time, which I think this is a great moment in time.
Absolutely. And Vikram, that's exactly what the viewer is left with. I mean, this is precisely what I thought, that this is a series where the characters are kind of becoming a segue to, talk about whatever else or not talk about it, depending on how the audience takes it. But it's not that being imposed, vice versa, which is very true. And the operatic piece as well, because I feel like the cinematography really lends itself to that. I almost feel like the visuals, along with obviously the dialogues and everything else, which kind of brings me, Vikram, to the silences in the series. It's something that I felt was really conspicuous. The fact that there are these poetic silences, which seem to be some of the strongest and most poignant elements of the series, where you're not sort of drip feeding the audience, you're not undermining their intelligence, but rather, whether it's a kind of wounded nostalgia, whether it's a kind of pathos, it's a relationship breakdown between two people. I don't know, I just felt it added an intimacy, it added a lot of gravitas to the entire thing. So as a storyteller, talk to us about the power of including these quietly fierce moments in the series.
It's been one of my favorite things to do ever since I've making films. I think, and some people actually use as a complaint, saying there's too many silent moments in the movie. And things you do. I personally love it. I think some of the favorite things that I've done in my entire career, whether it's there's a scene in Udan, for example, where Rohan steals his father's money and sees his phone and sees some cigarettes before he goes out to party, and that whole sequence is in complete silence.
Yes.
And it's one of my favorite moments. I just love it. I mean, for me, that's just pure movie making. It's pure storytelling without the crutch of having to sort of like have a dialogue. And Trapped is full of those moments of just silence, of one man alone by himself, just doing that. And I think, again, pure cinema. Lutera is. And this one as well. There are moments here where I just like love the use of just music and silence and people sort of like just doing the thing. This is I don't know, it's an affinity that I have to that kind of storytelling. I think it's very natural to me to be able to tell stories that way. So it's almost like I want to be able to tell a silent movie maybe one day, which is just to not have any dialogue in it at all. I think it comes from this. I don't know, maybe many years later, I read something that I think Francis Ford Coppola said, where he spoke about the fact that maybe the talkies came too soon into the movies. And we hadn't had a chance to really push ourselves as a cinema, as a medium of storytelling, where you had the silent era, where you had whether it's Chaplin or whether it's Buster Keaton, any of these filmmakers who've gone and made the great movies of the silent era. But did they push it far enough before the talkies came in, before sound came in? Because once sound came in, then you're just making the talkie. You're taking theatre and you're putting it on the screen and you're recording the entire thing on a camera. But it'd be really cool to express ourselves in a far enough sort of way. And that, when I read that, I was like, wow, that's actually kind of true. I think there is one purist part of me who loves these sort of like silent scenes, because sometimes you can. In fact, and in lots of times there's, in Jubilee, for example, the scene where Srikanth Roy comes into Sumitra's coach in the train at the end of episode 1, that scene actually had dialogue. He comes inside, she sits on the bed, he shows her the newspaper, and he says, Nal Damayanti is flopped, and Roy Talkies needs your youth, your and Madan Kumar's youth. And that's a line, and we did it. And then suddenly we just tried to say, okay, what if we just took out all the dialogue and did that? And it just worked so much better sometimes than,
Wow.
a moment, especially when a moment between two intimate people. Sometimes you don't need sound to be able to express things intimately between people who know each other so well. Just the look is enough.
And Vikram, that was precisely one of the scenes I was thinking about, because I feel like so much is conveyed, and I obviously didn't know the backstory to it, but the fact that dialogue might have actually detracted from that, but it's beautiful.
It did,
yeah. The treatment is beautiful. Now, of course, Vikram, it's really hard to talk about Jubilee without talking about casting. And I know you've spoken about the subtlety of casting. You've spoken about, in some cases, having the power of non-stars as they're so-called or perceived in the mix. And that was definitely one of the things that I took away as I was watching it. I think the labels anyway are problematic of star, non-star, whatever, but I think you catch my drift. But just staying on casting for a moment, Vikram, now, whether that is Apar Shakti, who we have clearly not seen in such an unprecedented avatar. And I'm also going to be curious to ask you whether that's part of the factors that led you to choose him, because obviously it's something completely unpredictable. Even with, everybody, but Prasenjit Roy, who's obviously stellar, got a stellar body of work behind him. But, it's a very delicate dance, that role, because a little bit extra and it can seem indulgent, a little bit less and it can seem underwhelming or too bland. And he's hit this really sweet spot. But really, Vikram, I think, and again, I said this in my video earlier, but I think the jewel in the crown is Siddhant Gupta. And I couldn't believe I've not watched any of his work before, but just effortless from the body language to the dialogue delivery, not over sanitized, completely, comfortable in his skin. Talk to us, Vikram, a little bit about what goes into the casting of something like Jubilee. How do you realize when someone seems to be the right fit? And then also kind of more pragmatically, do you look at auditions? How does this happen?
Everything is auditions. It's all, especially for the three main, Siddhant, Apar Shakti and Vamika, all three of them auditioned. They were actors that I didn't know. I knew of Apar only because I'd seen him in Dangal and I'd seen a couple of other things that he had done. So I knew that, okay, he is this interesting face, Apar, Ayushman's younger brother. One knew that. The other two I didn't know at all. So it's a mixture. So if the of the seven, in that sense, I think Jamshed Khan as well. So Nandish, Vamika, Siddhant, and Apar were all auditioned. They all came through my casting director Anmol, and it was a long sort of process. I think with Apar, it's like unexpected because I saw his name and I'm like, okay, really, Apar's audition, this should be interesting. Let me check out what it is, and I really liked it. I loved his audition. Siddhant was a revelation within the first audition itself. It's like, and because Jay was actually, I think, the toughest to cast in the sense that you wanted to be able to have a guy who's intense and who's also good looking and is also charming and also can be many things, and he's almost like he's not one note, he's not a one trick pony. Not that Madan isn't, but Madan you knew was built in that mold of intensity that can be sort of played that way. He's a star. So Siddhant was, and again, just like he came off the page in that sense. His audition itself, the first time you saw him, you're like, wow, this guy is actually really, really interesting. So then you see that, and you audition another scene, and then you meet the guy, and then see what happens. So we had a very extensive audition process that actually went on in Jubilee. It was one of the first things we got into, and we were also lucky that, in a way, that we had to go into the pandemic, because we were supposed to start shooting in April 2020, and pandemic happened. We had to push to April 21, like literally by a whole year, because no one had any clue whether are we going to be back to life in 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, who knows. So let's just push it by an entire year. And I got lucky because in that time we had a lot, especially for the secondary cast, we had a lot of time to be able to process the secondary cast and work with them. And a lot of our actors, Siddhant especially, and Prasenjit, had a year to be able to rehearse their stuff and come back. So when they came back in 21, they were very well rehearsed. It was very well refined. They didn't need to, refer to them. They didn't need to even look at the script sometimes, especially Siddharth and Prasenjit. Bhamika is the one actor, like I had actually cast somebody else at the start in 2020, and then that didn't happen. And then when I saw, interestingly enough, because of the pandemic, everything was online, so I had to join Instagram to actually have like live chats and stuff. And when I was on there, I started following Bhamika, and I found that she's actually quite a goofball when it comes to some of her reels. And I was like, wow, this is actually really interesting. I never saw this side of Niloufar. I never saw Niloufar being as somebody who could be goofy, who could be, like a real person. It's like you always see the page. It's almost like, okay, this one is almost she's gorgeous and she's picture perfect and all that kind of stuff. And so that made me just go back and say, you know what, I need to change this casting. I need to go back and do that. So these 3 and these 4 actually all came through a very, very rigorous audition process. Prasenjit, Aditi, and Ram were the ones where I didn't audition them. It was more like a straight up phone call to them, because you're being able to cast people. Ram is like almost, he is so much the personality of Walia that you don't even need to. It was almost like I called him like, look, I'm sending you some material. Let me know if you want to do it. He's like, I'm doing it. I'm like, you haven't even ready. He's like, I'm doing it. You don't have to. I'm doing it. I'm like, you got to be fat and ugly and, and have a mustache. She's like, all the better. He's like, I'm doing it. I'm like, okay, fine.
Oh my God.
It was one of those. And Prasenjit and Aditi, met them, spoke to them, told them what it's about, sent them material. They were both, very happy to come on board. Because for those two, for them, I needed somebody. I needed the presence of the star. I needed somebody who's gorgeous. And Prasenjit, again, it's almost like you saw him almost saying, okay, here is in Srikanth Roy, and in my mind was almost like sort of like looking at a Marcello Mastroianni meets Michael Corleone from Godfather Part 2, the waistcoats and the sleeves, and that. Like, that is the look, and Prasenjit just fit that so beautifully, and he brought so much nuance to the to that character.
Yeah. Also, Vikram, very reassuring to hear that such a large part of the casting was quite organic, right? Like auditions and all of that stuff, and I think that's quite hopeful. I want to talk a little bit about Sacred Games. Of course, that is a slow burner. There's wicked humor, there's parts that are dark and gritty, but there's also some very deep-seated emotional, goings on there. And what I found quite refreshing, and I'm sort of talking about the first part because I haven't seen the second season actually fully. But with Saif, you find like you're seeing the actor more than the star in a sense. And then Nawazuddin as well, Vikram. In fact, I was reading somewhere about Nawaz in Sacred Games, and it said there's no actor in the country who embodies chaos, both mental and elemental, better than Nawaz. And I felt that was so true, right?
That is very true.
And so I suppose kind of extrapolating from there, what I'm asking is that in a sense, it really showed to the world what India could produce in terms of global storytelling. And so my question is, do you think Sacred Games was responsible for launching Netflix in India? And I don't just mean that literally. I mean kind of more symbolically in a sense and metaphorically. Talk to us a little bit about that experience.
So Sacred Games was interesting. It was a funny, it was a interesting journey because I was in LA. This was early 2016. I had gone there for vacation at the end of 2015. I was there in 2016, and my agent David Tagioff he's based in LA. And even though I was on vacation, I was there for a few days in the beginning of January. I'm like, is there anybody you want me to meet while I'm still here? Because I'm here and I'm heading back. He's like, I think it should be Netflix. I was like, why? He's like, I have a feeling they're going to go international. So just meet them, just get into a room with them, shake hands with them, say hi, how are you, whatever, and then I'll give them the brief about who. So I had a very casual meeting. Literally the next day, Netflix announced that they're going live to multiple countries, and
wow,
that happened. And then in March, I was going back to LA because my wife and daughter had been there. My daughter was less than a year old, and they needed kind of like help to sort of transfer. They'd been there for about 6 months, and they had sort of like, or 3 months, and they needed help to come back. So I went back to LA, and before I was going to go, it was interesting. It was like Netflix reached out and said, "Have you read Sacred Games, the book?" And I was like, "Yeah, I read it. I hadn't read it." So I was like, "Sure." And this was like maybe 5 days before the meeting with them, and it's a 1,000-page novel which I had to speed read in 5 days. Raced through it, walked into the meeting at Netflix again, thinking it's going to be another like a pitch. I'm going to go there and sort of like pitch for Sacred Games, and it's like Vikram Chandra is in the room. You know what I mean? The author of the book itself is in the room. Like, oh wow! I'm like, wow, this is serious. This is not. They're not playing around. They're not fooling around right now. And it was very quick. They're like, you know, we love your work. We want you to do it. This is the entire thing. Let's go. We want this to be our first show. And I was like, okay, fine. Came back to India after that. I started to put together a writer's room, because again, this whole concept of like a showrunner and a writer's room and stuff was unique. I had to actually go out and Google and read and figure out what does the showrunner do, what's it, you know, how is it different from what we're used to. So I put together a writer's room, so ironically, it's like we pitched the Sacred Games meeting happened literally 1 week before Amazon actually called up and greenlit Jubilee. It was a week, and I had to call up Aparna and say, "Aparna, I'm really sorry, I can't do it right now because I'm doing Sacred Games." And she was so upset, but you know, she still kind of like stuck to her promise to do it afterwards.
Right.
Yeah. And then so we put the writer's room together, and I was pretty clear that I wanted to figure this out. We wanted to figure this out on our own. We didn't want to take any help. We didn't want to let's get an American showrunner to help us or an American writer to help us, any of that kind of stuff. I was like, this is going to be India's first. If it's going to be a show part of India, let's just do it ourselves. So made sure that we had an Indian writer's room, didn't take any assistance. We figured it out along the way. I think what really, in Sacred Games, what is amazing is Vikram Chandra's original novel. I think there is and hats off to Netflix for identifying the novel as something that can be turned into, you know, a series, because it starts with a very small story with a great hook. There's an incredible hook about a cop who gets a call, a down-and-out cop on his luck gets a call from a gangster, from the most wanted gangster in the country, who says, "I want to talk to you and you only." And that hook, certainly from what starts as just a small little thing in episode 1, expands into this world of, you know, of Bombay and of Bollywood and religion and politics and so many things, and ends up becoming this huge big story, which I thought was phenomenal for the series format, something that really grows episode by episode by episode. And that really helped us, and we had a great team of writers. We put it together, and again, the casting on that, which is, if you know, one is, it's almost like if you ask, and I mean, of course, nothing is set in stone, but ask me like the most important things about filmmaking is like, first is script, second is casting, and then third is mood. And mood kind of encapsulates everything else, which is your music or your sense of how you want to direct something and what you want to put into it, and colors and pacing, all that comes into the mood, which is actually the last. It's like after script, literally casting is everything. And I think on Sacred Games, that whole idea of being able to cast, you know, Nawaz, and you're absolutely right, the guy who embodies chaos the most is someone like him. But also, I think a lot of the other people, Jitendra Joshi as Kartikar was a revelation, Kubra as Kuku, or Jatin Sarna as Bunty. Any of these actors were just, you know, Neeraj Kabi was phenomenal, Radhika Apte was phenomenal. They were all just like, you know, the really, really incredible cast that kind of came together for that. And I think the fact that they all recognize the fact that this is something which is going to be Netflix's first. And Netflix knew that this is going to launch them in the country. In fact, the marketing they did for the launch was, I haven't seen a juggernaut like that since. I haven't seen anybody do that kind of like really go out there and splash. And it felt so good as a creator to sort of like see your work splashed like that, because we never seen it. We've been, you know, struggling kind of indie filmmakers almost in a sense, you know, a whole bunch of us, whether it's me and Anurag and Devakar and a whole bunch of us, even Zoya to an extent. We've been these, you know, strugglers who've had to sort of like fight for our posters to be seen, and you're constantly calling up and saying more posters and more hoardings and, you know, where is that kind of stuff. And here you had so much, and you know, you were flooding the market, and it was beautiful to see. And yeah, I mean, it just, I think it did set the bar in a place which was great. I just feel that maybe until this year, which I think has been a bit of a banner year 2023 has been a bit of a banner year, I think, for this. I think we finally come of age, almost like 5 years later. We've had a lot of, there's been a lot of good shows in between. Don't get me wrong, but I think this year, especially the fact that there is Dahad and there is House of Lies and there is Scoop and there is Jubilee and there is Fuzzy. I think, and it's not even half the year over. I think it's been incredible to actually sort of like see that quality that's out there. That's out there this year. So it's a definite sign that we can do it. You know, we have the chops to do it. We can go out there and all these incredible shows and get them out. We just need all these shows need that time and that love and that affection and that that push to be able to get them made. I think there's a tendency from the studios to be able to say, "Oh, let's go more generic." But I think the need of the hour is to actually go more kind of unique, to go more diverse in a sense.
Absolutely, and I think that's sort of where Sacred Games started. And like you're saying, there have been things in the middle, but in fact, I just finished watching Scoop, and it was kind of off the back of Jubilee in some ways, and it's heartening to see that sort of stuff is happening now, and Farzi as well, like you said. But with something like Scoop, I also feel again, Karishma coming out, and I don't want to again get into stars or not stars, but what a stellar performance. But then everyone else around that as well is, whether that's Zishan or other people. So you're absolutely right.
But it's the creators getting a chance to be able to sort of like actually go and express themselves. And I think what happened right in the beginning is that when they started off, it's like, okay, we want to make TV streaming shows in the way that they made anywhere else in the world. You get a showrunner, you get directors.
Yeah.
We're not ready for that format in India. We're not ready to be able to say it's a showrunner-led format. It's very rare. Patal Lok is pretty much the only show that is showrunner-led, in the sense of it actually being Sudeep Sharma, who's not directing a single episode, but he's the guy who's the brains. He's written the episodes. He's kind of put it together. He's on set. It's Prosit and it's Avinash Arun who are actually directing the pieces together. But if you look at your I mean, especially if it's Scoop is all Hansal. Jubilee is all me. House of Lies is all Avinash. There is a sense of like they're led. I mean, there's almost like director-led. You can have second and third directors, but it's not really that showrunner separate from directors kind of scenarios. Like the director is somebody who's very much part and parcel of the process, and I think that's been the Indian process so far, which I think now has been recognized in the sense that because initially we'll always be like, no, you're the showrunner. We want to have everything every 12 months, and the showrunner should be only directing 1 or 2 episodes and. I think that's now changed to a place where, okay, let directors kind of like be there, let them do their thing. If they're willing to sort of direct 10 episodes, why not? What's stopping them from doing that?
Yeah. And so you think that really works to you, Vikram? Do you feel like that current format works, or would you envision kind of the showrunner piece coming into India at a later point?
The showrunner piece should also, I see definitely be there and definitely coexist. I don't think it's like one or the other. I definitely feel that the showrunner piece should coexist over here, depending on from show to show. But we also need the directors. We don't have here are we don't have the volume of journeyman directors who can go from show to show, where they're just really, really good at their job at setting up scenes and being efficient at directing, efficient at putting scenes together, efficient at making the day, and which is in a series that's what you hire directors sometimes because that's what they bring to the table, in the sense that here's a showrunner whose vision it is, and you're going to fulfill the showrunner's vision. Directors in India tend to be a little bit more like, no, but I have my own vision. I want to do my own thing, and that's fine. That's great. So we don't have enough of the other directors who can fill in for filling in. So you need to be able to get newer directors, junior directors, either directors who are not fully established and people who can sort of like. So that's what I'm doing. The next thing that I'm doing in Black Warrant is in that world where it's like I'm show running and I'll have multiple directors working.
I see.
With me, but you want to be able to blood, and that's the purpose in that is also be able to blood new people to get them out and be able to sort of like, come and do that. So we're not there yet. I think we will get there, but right now it's because it's more expressive. It's more the people expressing themselves and creating to create their own work, which is where we are.
Yeah. Vikram, I want to step into a little bit about your own backstory, and I suppose what I mean is from everything I've heard you say or read. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you were en route to becoming an engineer when when I think you've said the story about your mother sort of coming onto campus and when you were at university, and that was your exposure into storytelling in a sense. Now, of course, Vikram, it would be fair, I suppose, to say that engineering, I know it's changing, but in large parts of South Asia, engineering would still be seen very much as the bankable, lucrative, safe option. I know that's a cringe-worthy word, but especially for a man in India, right? And I suppose my question is, what drew you to the prospect or the potential of pursuing engineering in the first place? And then beyond how storytelling happened, I suppose I'm curious to ask you, what made you feel like this is something I could enjoy? This is something I could kind of stay the course with? In some ways, this is something that I could do for the rest of my life. So talk to us about both those things, because in some ways, in terms of perception, they're diametrically opposed. So you are engineering different worlds, but that's a completely different craft, I suppose, right?
No, it is. So engineering happened because, again, this is like a safe option. My father had he had his own company that was, they were electrical test and measuring instruments that, if I think about it right now, like, wow, I can't imagine myself being in that world at all. But I had done, that was a safe option. It's a family business. You're expected to kind of carry it on. So therefore, engineering, and to be able to sort of, to enter that world and to carry on with it was the expectation. I came from a joint family, so therefore there was that. So filmmaking happened per chance because my parents had got divorced. My mom had got her first job as a production manager to a filmmaker, and this was when I was in junior college, so like 93 or so. She was wanting to do this talk show for teenagers called Teen Talk, where you speak to a bunch of teenagers and talk to them about their issues, and whether it's about sex or marriage or divorce or education or any of these things that they feel like they need to talk about. We were Gen X, I guess. So at that time, I was talking to Gen X about this kind of stuff. And then, so what happened after? So she got me and a bunch of my friends to be able to sort of come on and say that, okay, now you guys help me out with this, and do research and become production runners, and go here, get those drawings and get that model and blah blah blah. And we did that. And I found the first day of shoot, when I went for that first day of shoot, I thought that was just incredible. It was one of the day went by like that. It was the quickest day of my life, and it was really one of those like, oh, okay, this is something that I believe I can do. And I found that I had an affinity for it. It didn't feel like a job. It felt like, okay, I really like this. I love this, and I can learn that much more. So I fell into it. I literally fell into it by pure chance. And then and I was young enough at that point of time to be able to say, okay, fine, this is, I'm not discovering myself at the age of 30, I'm discovering myself at the age of 17, which is fantastic. So yeah, there's been a stroke of luck. There's been also a stroke of privilege for sure. I think the fact that I didn't need to get an engineering job to support myself. I didn't need to pay for my food and my clothing and a house over my head for a long time, because I had a family that supported me. So for sure, my privilege is definitely a part of where I am. Also, the other lucky thing was that when my mom started working as a production manager with this filmmaker called Shukla Das's assistant director was this guy fresh out of FTI called Sanjay Bansali. So mom and Sanjay Bansali, became kind of like close friends, and and when he was after making Khamoshi, he was looking for new ADs and hotel education. And I kind of put my hand up, can I just be there? And he was like, of course, come. And that, of course, changed my life a second time around. It was more about, between 93 and when I started working in 97, I was doing work in television. I was assisting a director called Manu Gagi. Right. It was comfortable. This was in the mid-90s in India. I was a 18, 19-year-old making 2,000 rupees a week, working on a television show for a day and a half a week, literally. Like one day shoot, half a day. And I had 8,000 bucks a month to spend the way I wanted. Didn't need to pay for rent, didn't need to pay for anything. And then Sanjay, life was good, life was great.
Yeah.
And then Sanjay, and then Bansali's the opportunity comes along to work on Hum Dill. That's like a 30 days a month, 2.5 years of my life for almost no money. Which is again a different way of. I mean, again, the privilege of being able to work with him came. But yeah, I mean, of course, it's not. I worked hard. I have my own kind of like voice, so therefore you end up making what you can out of what's given to you. But yeah, that's what the journey's been. It's been both. It's been coming from Mom through Bansali, then meeting Anurag after that, and then
Yeah. I saw amazing photos of both of you at the film festival.
I can.
So lovely. Vikram, talk to me about role models. Do you have people that you've sort of, I don't know whether I should say looked up to or imbibed from, whether whether within the entertainment industry or outside? Are there any such folks?
I think no, all of them. I think all of them. I think the first director I worked with, Manu, was a lovely guy. He his love for cinema, love for a certain kind of like movies beyond what we had seen, whether it's Bollywood or Hollywood. So Manu was the guy who actually introduced me to the movies of Bergman, and then through that, looking at Bergman for the very first time, you started then discover saying, okay, there's also Fellini, and there's also Godard, and there's also Truffaut, and there's also all these really, really interesting filmmakers. Bansali for sure, in terms of being able to mount a film and film craft and all those and all those things. Anurag, for this whole seat of your pants filmmaking approach that he has, which is just that sense of like of just being able to, sometimes you don't have the resources, you don't have the planning time, just go out there and sort of like shoot. And also the principle. Anurag is one of the most principled people that I know that I've met. The principle of being able to say, of keeping your word, or being able to be honest about your stuff. My mom is again somebody who I look up to because she's an extremely honest, very sincere person. I think that eventually counts a lot in the long run, especially in an industry like this. And then you start to pick up from people. So I worked with Deepa Mehta for a little bit, and I picked up, from her the concept of actually blocking a scene every morning, which has been something that I've been doing the rest of my life after that. Yeah. Where before you shoot, you call in your actors, everybody, you figure out what you're doing for the day, and then you go off and do it. And I can't understand why people just don't do that more often in this country. But so there is that, and I think once you find the right role models, obviously not everybody's perfect, so you take what you can from people, and the things you don't like, you just pass on inside. So I think if you're intelligent enough, and then you learn as well. Like you learn through your own processes, your own insecurities, your own mistakes. I've calmed down a lot. I used to be much angstier than and far more kind of principled. I'm still very principled, but I'm just definitely calmer. I can always see two sides to something. So I think it's a mixture of lots of things like that.
Yeah, but Vikram, and if you don't mind my sort of asking a follow-up on that, but talk to us a little bit about your relationship with your mother. Because I know you've mentioned sort of, the earlier days and all of that, but talk to us a little bit about that relationship.
So she's produced pretty much everything that I've done except for Sacred Games. She's been producer on all my movies and on Jubilee. It's been interesting.
That is amazing.
Yeah, she has been. Jubilee was her last big one. She claims she's retired. I don't know how long she's going to be retired for.
Taking a break.
Yeah, she's. No, so it's been interesting because there's definitely an element of trust over there, which is unsaid. I don't need to be able to sort of like gauge a person to be able to sort of like trust a person to be able to know what, because she herself is extremely principled, and so I can, as a director, completely trust her. So like that. But of course, sometimes because there's obviously always going to be a clash between director and producer. On a producer's job is to service the budget, the director's job is to service the script. And I think at some point in time, there's always going to be a bit of a clash. And I think because I'm the son, it makes it more difficult to accept the fact that the director is eventually the boss who has to have the final call on something.
Okay, yeah.
I think that there's a tendency for us to fight a lot. But I mean, it's all good. She has a granddaughter who she loves very much, so that way we managed to keep the peace to by her coming home to see my daughter. Yeah, that's how it happens. No, but there are, like with any, I think with any sort of like parent-child relationship, and especially when it comes into professional space, is always going to be a certain amount of like give and take. I think there are many positive things, a few negative things, and I think both of us we've learned to sort of deal with it in the right sort of way, and say things that we should say and don't say things we don't need to say.
I wish more people followed that mantra, Vikram. Honestly, I think life would have been
It
easy.
takes a lot of time to figure it out as well.
Yeah.
Not easy.
And that's a great segue actually, because I want to talk to you a little bit about fatherhood, right? So, how old is your daughter now?
She's 8.
She's 8? Oh my goodness. Okay, I don't know why I thought she was much younger. But anyway, okay, so she's 8. But talk to us, Vikram, about fatherhood. But what I mean by that is, I know, of course, personally it changes everything. But has it sort of molded, or kind of does it play any role in your outlook, in your perspective, in the way that you're thinking about stories now at all, just in the person that you are?
No, it hasn't. I mean, I wish I could, and my daughter tells me this as well. She's like, why don't you make movies for something that I can watch? And I was like, you're absolutely right. Because she's like, okay, can I watch it on? I'm like, no. She's like, this thing, no. Jubilee, no. She's like, I can't watch anything you made. I'm like, no, you can't. I'm sorry, you can't. That's just the way it is. And so she's like, why don't you sort of like, why can't you make something that I can watch? And part of me is like, okay, I haven't been brought up as that kind of filmmaker, and that's not been my schooling as such, but yes, I should, I should be able to. So I think she's definitely helped me also accept the fact, it's taken me years to kind of accept the fact that I'm actually a bit of a genre junkie, in the sense that, the action films of James Cameron or Ridley Scott or something that's my kind of like, that's the zone I love. I love the Terminator 2, Terminator 1, True Lies. Like those are like Back to the Future, Die Hard, my favorite kind of movies, of all time.
Yeah.
And I think maybe because we didn't have the opportunity to make them here, you always had to make a story which seemed to be kind of like within the Bollywood, milieu structure. You have to have songs and blah, blah. So therefore, it needs to be a little bit more emotional story as opposed to straight up action kind of story. But I think that's changing now. I think that's definitely changing now. One can not have to stick to that. So my daughter's been, so one is that I've also sort of like, I say, okay, constantly questioning like, who am I as a filmmaker? Who am I as a storyteller? Who am I? And I think she's brought that out a lot more than me. But I think what tends to happen also is that while you, there's a certain amount, I think filmmakers have this in general, maybe it's just, me and the filmmakers I know. I think in general, we tend to have this very chill kind of relationship with money. Where it's almost like you make a film, I don't get paid, it's fine. But I think that when you're a father and you are the head of the family, or it's a family unit that you're kind of taking care of, you tend to think that, okay, I can do what I want to do, but I also have the responsibilities to be able to take care of people who depend on me. At least for a few more years, they will depend on me to be able to sort of like do that. So you tend to then, I think, balance your thing to say, okay, I make sure that I do certain things and make sure I do certain things for getting paid, to be able to put that away, and then also at the same point in time have the freedom to be able to do what I want to. So you tend to not think, as directors we can be very selfish, and I think what my child has taught me is that I can't be extremely selfish about my own career. I have to also think of family and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. But also what you said about just finding yourself a little bit more, or asking yourself, who are you? That's really powerful. And it's funny how kids have a way of doing that, right? Of bringing that out of you.
Yeah.
Now, Vikram, coming back to Jubilee momentarily, one of the things that I sort of felt, and I think others must have felt that too, was that without saying it as such, but you can take it away, is the fact that while so much has changed in the entertainment industry, so much still sort of remains familiar or remains the same, unchanged. And I suppose as someone who's been associated with storytelling for a while now, talk to us a little bit about what you might say to people starting out. And I don't mean this in like terms of, what advice might you, or what wisdom might you give, but it's more, what are some of the things you wish someone had flagged to you at the start of your journey and asked you to look out for or just watch out for?
I think I already tell this to every sort of like young filmmaker I meet, is that actors and singers and sports people, they can practice. And the thing is, how does a filmmaker practice? Filmmaking, directing especially, is not just about saying that here's there's a writing process, there's a filmmaking, there's a directing process, there's working with actors, there's managing time, there's managing people, there's a post-production editing process, there's a vision of what you want to say, how you want to say it, how much time you want to say it. So there's so much more that is just not about sort of saying action and cut. And I think that has to come from a certain amount of practice. And I tell every filmmaker I meet, I'm like, I don't care. You need to go out there and you need to shoot. You need to actually just shoot and edit and shoot and edit and shoot and edit and use music and tell stories and find out the finesse in what you need to do to tell stories. Don't leave that till the time when you feel you're going to make a feature film, because you're going to do it on somebody else's money and there's no coming back from that. So this is something that I have to sort of like discover by myself, sort of like, which is one of the famous, one of the stories that when I got married, the in-laws come and ask you like, what do you want as your wedding gift? They expect you to say that I'd like a watch or something. And I said, I want a video camera. They were like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, I want a video camera for my wedding gift. And
that's incredible.
Yeah, because back then it wasn't like everybody has an iPhone today and a laptop, and you can literally, with an iPhone today, you can actually shoot and edit and whatever you want on a device. Back 20 years ago, it wasn't the case. You had to be able to have professional equipment to be able to do it, and that camera was expensive and something that I couldn't afford, myself. So, and that actually was the greatest gift I ever got, because I shot everything under the sun. I shot, a friend's wedding. I would go to like a Rainforest wedding, shoot their wedding, day in, day out, come back home, spend the next 2 weeks taking that footage, putting it on the editing table, creating a story around it, creating humor, using music, and just giving to them as a gift, and making a DVD cover, printing a DVD cover, putting it into a box and giving it to them as a gift 2 weeks later, which is the greatest gift they ever received, because they still have it, But that's how you learn filmmaking. And I did this multiple times with multiple things. And best thing that I could have done then, because it helped me figure out, it helped me understand editing software. It helped me understand what to shoot, how to shoot. Not everything I made it to an editing table. Some things just got thrown away on the wayside, because it's not even worth editing. It's not even worth sort of like going into. That's fine. But at least you go through that process. And I think filmmakers need to discover yourself through that process. That is how you end up discovering yourself. Unless you end up going out and shooting a lot and, finessing your work a lot, I don't think. So that's something that I wish that I learned it myself pretty late, but I wish it's something that had been flagged kind of right in the beginning. And I think that, and of course, patience. I think one of the things with filmmakers is that there's a tendency that everybody explains, like, I want to be able to make my own film. Like, not gonna happen. I started working as an assistant director when I was 17. I made my first film when I was 32. So it's a pretty long journey, which you need if you want to be able to like really know your craft and know what you want to do. You need that much time to finesse your art to a place.
Do you read, Vikram? What sort of stories do you kind of feel drawn to, or what do you consume?
I used to read a lot. Unfortunately, with the way work has been time one after the other, I haven't. All the reading I've done is for work, unfortunately. So I still read a lot. I read a lot. I read a lot of scripts, a lot of books, but a lot of it is actually for work. So yeah, my
filmmaking or.
Sorry.
I was saying like related to filmmaking in cinema, or?
No, like stories that people want me to adapt, like books that people want me to adapt. Like so things that get pitched to me to be able to like take a book and adapt it, take a novel and adapt it, and that kind of stuff. So I think that there is that tends to happen. My comfort reading is actually is all the pulp, Dashiell Hammett, Raymond Chandler.
Yeah.
Classic noir fiction is my kind of go-to. So starting from them and then coming all the way to I think recent kind of like Swedish crime fiction,
Wow.
So that's my go-to for that. Or if not that, then graphic novels for sure, of all kinds. I have a deep dive into every kind of graphic novel. Is something that is there. Um, Went through a massive Murakami phase, and Rumi went through all kinds of phases. I read all kinds of stuff. But yeah, I haven't done. I think the last time I think when Akira was born, actually, was because we went for a holiday with me and Ishtika. This was like only 8 years ago. Where I didn't carry a phone with me, and I just took like novels. I took a bunch of Neil Gaiman books, and that's all I did. I just sat on the beach and read a bunch of stuff.
Genuinely,
And I
you
wish I
have
could
a
do
phone with you.
that.
Oh my God. That is incredible. Yeah. And speaking
It's been a
of,
while.
yeah, sorry, go ahead, Vikram.
No, I'm saying it's been a while. I'd like to be able to get back. Just that the one thing that I regret is the discipline of being able to get back to actually reading for
Yeah.
pleasure. I think that reading for
Yeah.
pleasure element is kind of gone out of the window right now.
Yeah. And speaking of Ishika, Vikram, I was going to ask, she's a photographer, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Mhm.
And I suppose I'm curious to ask you, what does it feel like to have a creative partner? And can you like, is there space to bounce off ideas with each other? And in general, who do you turn to for creative brainstorming and kind of constructive criticism? Because there is this tendency or this risk of just getting stuck in one's echo chamber with just the team, right? So I suppose I'm asking, what is it like to have a creative partner, and are you each other's sounding boards in some way creatively?
No, 100% all the time. I think Ishika does. She's also again somebody who's been working with me from the very first thing I've done.
That's what I was just gonna say, because she
We
was in Iran, right?
Yeah. She's in Iran. She's been in everything. She was in Jubilee as well. She was a small little cameo. She's got in Jubilee in the railway
What's
waiting
that?
room.
Really? Okay, I
It's
need to go back.
the first time Binod sees Jay in the dance, and he's dancing in that waiting room. Like
Yeah, yeah,
Ishika
yeah,
is
yeah.
very prominent in that close up. You'll see her. You'll see her
Wow.
again.
Okay. Yeah.
No, so she's been and because what's different with working with mom and Ishika is the fact that because Ishika is a photographer and said she and me are never going to clash on a creative at any point in time. It's like she's a great sounding board. Um, she has my ear, I have hers, and because she knows me so well, she knows when I'm actually when I'm struggling with something or trouble with something, there's always a little hand on my shoulder saying, express, say what. So I kind of blurt out what I feel. And most of the time she's doing it because she knows that when I just speak about it, the solution will come to me automatically as opposed to her giving me a solution. So there is that. But she is normally the first sounding board. Or any point in time I have trouble about if I have a tough decision to make or whatever, I'll always use her as a sounding board. For everything. It's the same, whether it's a new story or whether it's a finished script or to show the first version of a new cut or 20 minutes of something that I've actually sort of like done as a cut. And I want to be able to see is the mood working? Is it all falling into place? And the first person I'll show will be Ishika to be able to, and she's very cut and dried. And I mean, she's a great critic in
And
that
you need
sense.
that, I suppose, right? You definitely
100%, yeah, 100%. You need that, yeah, and because she's not coming from a technical perspective. It's a very straight up kind of humanist response and a very straight up sort of like audience response to something, which is like, this part, yes, this part, no, and this is working and that's not working, and I feel it need more of this and all that. So that way, it's nice to have that and not get technical and not someone who's too much. Sometimes with crew tends to happen that because you get the sense that you've worked so hard on something that you have to be able to like something even if you don't like it. So there is
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Vikram, last couple of questions, because I know I've taken your time, but I
No,
was
no, it's fine.
I was gonna say that, of course, I want to talk a little bit about social media because it's again hard to not talk about that. I mean, what's your relationship with social media? Is it a necessary evil? How much is too much? And I suppose I'm coming from this vantage point that some of the time, so for example, I've got two small daughters who are 5.5 and 6.5, and with Akira, I bet you can see the same thing, that they're going to be their generation that's growing up on technology. I mean, it's important to our lives, but that's a totally different ball game altogether. And one of the things that I feel sometimes that tends to happen with the best of us is that we conflate the optics of something like social media, be that following or virality or whatever else, with our pursuit of excellence, or in a sense, with producing something substantive. how do you drown out the noise, and what is sort of your relationship with it?
So, I mean, I guess, yes, necessary evil in a sense. I think purely because, for one, social media has become my source for news outside of, because, we stopped getting the newspaper at home because literally, like, no one would read the damn thing. The same with television at home. Like, I cut the cord 5 years ago. Now it's only streaming and whatever you need to be able to watch. So I think social media, one, is that it ends up taking the place of your news feed of what's actually happening in the world tends to come through you, to you through social media. It has become, at least for me or for anybody in my field, it's become the number one tool for marketing from a personal level, at least to have organic growth in marketing. Yes, you can have your trailer playing here, there, but it also needs to be able to sort of like play out to your own followers and therefore, that kind of stuff. So it is one of those things that you need to do, but there's also something that there are things that you like. There's also like there's a need to share, which I think that all of us tend to have, which I think we like to do, and we like to create little circles of whatever, of social circles, and being able to share that. I do think at some point in time that is like how much is the how much is too much question, right? Of what I always find. Instagram, especially, or any social media, I always find like the worst time to go on any social media is actually when you're feeling low in a weird sort of way. It's the worst place because that's the one time that everybody else's life seems to be so much better than yours, and that's the downward spiral that kind of tends to start. And because when it's like, oh, everybody's life is so good and blah blah blah, and yours is not. Now, at our age, I guess there's a tendency for us to be able to be aware of that. But for somebody who's much younger, when you're looking around and sort of like seeing how there's an unnatural standard that's been set around the world, which isn't new in a sense. I think television did it 20 years ago. Television shows did it 20 years ago. I think social media just made it a little bit more in your face. It's kind of amplified a lot of the problematic stuff. So yes, it's just, I think it's from a pure parent point of view, it's up to us as parents to be able to figure when it's too much, when it's not, because you can't run away from it. I don't think there's any chance that any of us or any of our kids are going to be able to run away from social media and be able to stay off it. Those are their choices. I don't think we can make those choices for them. If they choose not to be on it, by the time they're 18, 21, great, that's good for them. But it's not something that we can at this point in time. So, you can't have an Instagram account, or you can't, sort of like do that kind of stuff. So it's tricky. It's tricky. I think that just finding that right balance, but you know what it's like. It's like it's what they say, the dopamine hit of being able to find something is always very. That is a dopamine hit, and that's exactly why the phone and that's why it was created in the first place, and everybody likes that. And that's the unfortunate part. How do you be able to curb that? How do you the corporation's not going to do it for you, because that's exactly that's their lifeblood, that's what they thrive off. So I think it's I don't know, it's still evolving. I think it's still evolving in a way where I think we're still trying to figure it out.
Yeah. But Vikram, it's so nice to actually speak to someone with that reflexivity. And without the sense of you or I have mastered it, either with ourselves or our kids, because I think that's far from the truth. But this thing you've said about, there's a presentation of self, of course, which all of us are doing. And then B, genuinely this pattern you've identified of, when you go on, when you're not feeling your best yourself. And I think that can really kind of take on a life of its own, which is not very conducive.
Not at all, and they know it. The corporations know it. They know exactly like that. The whole doom scrolling is a thing. And doom scrolling is something that we used to do on what was that website called? About 10 years ago. It used to be that place where you just go on and you set your preferences for, oh, I like movies and I like humor, I like blah blah blah, and you just like, it's almost like a hit me kind of thing where you just go from like website to website to website. Sort of doing that, and I think from what your own curation to end up becoming, this is sort of your own curation, sort of like coming where It's just the mindless consumption of something.
Yeah.
It's a great way to pass time, but yeah, it's not very, it's not very
Sure,
good.
absolutely. And again, like you've said with so much honesty, that it's hard. I feel it as a mother as well, that the technology is kind of indispensable to the kids now, more than us, and you sort of don't want them to be an outlier on that front either. So it's definitely a tricky one. Now,
That
Vikram,
is, no, it definitely is. I have a niece, for example, who's been in that, whose parents again have struggled with the entire fact that like she's now 12, and
yeah.
they were like, we ideally don't want to give her a phone till time she's like 14 or something like that, but they had to because she was left as the only person in class who didn't have one, and even then what do you do?
Because that's another
That's how
problem in and of itself. Yeah. Now, Vikram, you've obviously done stuff on partition, on early India during its infancy, on the entertainment industry, which in so many ways anchors the country. But also, as we were talking about, other stuff, like there's been Lotera, there's been Uran, there's been, kind of the more superhero stuff. There's also been religion, politics coming into, sacred games, as we said earlier. So much of it kind of this fusion of what India is about. And I'm curious to ask you a slightly more abstract or philosophical question about, what is your relationship with home? And whether that's a place, whether that's a set of people, another nucleus, or a combination of all of those things. But, I know it feeds into your work, but how do you sort of think about this relationship?
I guess home. I think it's the people. I think it's the people that end up making. It's not so much. I mean, I've lived honestly in now. By now, Ishika and me have lived ourselves in. This is our fourth home that we've been married. Fifth home actually that we've been married in and living in.
Okay.
I've lived in I think 8 homes. My entire life has been like there's been that. I think. So yes, while there is a definite connection with the homes of my childhood, and there's always you always create your great memories in that sort of place. It's the people who end up making home. And I think as a filmmaker, it's interesting because there is one part of your home which is your home, your family. It's like it's your wife and your child and your parents and your close set of friends, and that is home. But as a filmmaker, it's the temporary homes you end up making every time you make a film, because it's almost like you become this. Sounds like you become the patriarch of the family in a sense. Right? You're always starting a family. That family can be a family that's together for 3 years, or it could be a family that's together for 6 months. It doesn't matter sometimes, but it is a family unit that you make, because there are times when you'll be together. I mean, in Jubilee, for example, I had a team which is there with me for 3 years, give or take, and we shot for about 90 days, which is a 6-month intensive shooting kind of period where you're seeing each other every single day. From 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. You're living together, you're eating together, you're partying together, you're drinking together, you're working together. For a good 6 month or a year like period and stuff like that. So you make these families and you disband these families and you make them again, disband them again. So there's little temporary homes that start to come up. And so home is a very fluid concept. I think it's not places. I think it's people. It's the memories that you end up creating in the places with the sort of people that who've been with. That for me is home.
That's beautiful, Vikram. That's really beautiful. Tell me what's next. I know you briefly referred to it, but can you talk a little bit, or are you just? I know you're not just breathing at the moment, but.
No, that's fine. I have there's a film that I already shot in February called Control.
Oh my God! So when are you sleeping?
So that we shot. It was 15-day shoot, really quick shoot. So I'm in post-production for that right now, and then I shoot something as a series called Black Warrant, which is based on Sunetra Chaudhary and Sunil Gupta's book, which is about Sunil Gupta's life as a jailer in Tihar, which was in the 80s and 90s and first decade of this century. So that is going to start at the end of the year sometime. So these are the two things that I'm actively working on.
Wow. Okay. Final question. I promise it's the last one, Vikram. I want to share with you, I want to wrap with a quote, Vikram, which I heard at NYU where I work some years ago, and I felt like It really made me stop and think about things with a little more profundity, I suppose. And I'd be curious to get your reaction to it. It's a quote by Sir Henry David Thoreau, but this is kind of a rehashed version that the guest speaker was relaying to everyone. And it said something like, most men and women lead lives of quiet desperation and go to the grave with the song still in them. So he said something like, most men and women lead lives of quiet desperation and go to the grave with the song still in them. And I suppose I want to close, Vikram, by asking you, because people who follow you, people who see your work, there's an element of, there's fame and glamour and success and, all of that limelight piece of it. But I'm just pulling us behind the scenes a little bit and saying, have there been moments of feeling that quiet desperation? And really, what is your song, I suppose?
No, 100%. I think there is, as a filmmaker, and maybe this is having worked with someone like Sanjay Bansali, or putting your own heroes on a pedestal where you revere Scorsese and Tarantino and Christopher Nolan and Hitchcock and Kurosawa and Billy Wilder and Satyajit Ray and Vijay Anand. When you put them on a pedestal, the next natural thing is, where is my place in the gallery? And I think that there is always that, and I think it's that mixed with, as I said, the whole idea of like, who am I and what kind of filmmaker am I? And a lot of people sort of like say, okay, every film of yours is different from the other. And the truth is that, because I always feel that the film is always more important than my style to the film. And what is the best way to be able to tell a certain sort of story is what's more important than saying, okay, I have one style and therefore I can adapt it to every single film. But at the same time, trying to find myself as that filmmaker, to find the most truthful version of myself, of the kind of stories that I actually want to end up telling. So I think it's a bit of both. There's that the quiet desperation is in being able to sort of like, because you want to know as a director, if once you set your sights high enough, you also want to be sort of like to be able to, and not to make it sound like you're putting yourself on a pedestal, but you do want to be on a pedestal in a sense of like, be able to sort of like say, what am I leaving behind for the next 50 years for generation to look back and saying, okay, these are the stories he told and these are the things he said, and this is why I like him as a filmmaker. This is why I think his stories have X value. So there is that. Of course, you're always sort of searching for that. So there's definitely an element of truth in that. And so so what is this song that I'm going to be singing is something that I don't know, I guess.
Yeah. And I have Yeah, sorry, say it again.
That's a great quote, though.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm so glad that it hit home, because the fact that you said you think about, what do you leave behind? That's exactly the essence of it, right? And the legacy can be large or little, and it doesn't have to fit, again, a particular assembly line. But if truth be told, Vikram, Jubilee inches you towards that pedestal, right? And I know one is their own harshest critic, but it is really such an outstanding piece of work, and I can't say enough about it. So I was so delighted when I realized we could have this conversation, and thank you so much for your time. I have really enjoyed every bit of speaking with you.
Oh, anytime. It's been a lovely time. It's been a very nice time. Thank you.
I just didn't want to give you questions that I know a million other people would have. There's a bit of that. I was like, he's probably going to be like, I've done this for the last 2 months now. So, yeah. But I was genuinely curious as well. So thank you very much, Vikram.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.